So recently there have been concerns that executions by lethal injection, which are supposed to be quick and painless, aren't either. Typically, executions are done with 3 drugs given in stages. So the first drug is an anesthetic, and it's supposed to anesthetize the inmate. The second drug is called a paralytic, and it's supposed to keep the inmate from flailing around. And then the third drug is supposed to stop the heart. Executioners used to use a drug called sodium thiopental as that first drug, as the anesthetic, but then the only company that made it in the United States stopped making it. So they went to Europe and said, can we get it from you? But European drug companies said, no, we are not going to sell it to you if it's going to be used for the purpose of executing inmates. So since they haven't been able to use the sodium thiopental for the executions, they've gone to another anesthetic. This one is called midazolam. And in 3 executions, there might have been some problems with it. Instead of going quickly and painlessly, witnesses who watched the execution said that inmates were gasping or snorting or making choking sounds, and at least in one execution that the inmate was actually speaking. So among states that do the death penalty, there's been some consideration, does this 3-step method really work? So now using this new drug combination has raised some questions about whether it constitutes cruel and unusual punishment and whether it might be unconstitutional.
American citizens the FEMA plans to imprison American citizens have generated a lot of interest around the country in locating the potential prison camps throughout the country.
Our transition team is working very smoothly, efficiently, and effectively. Truly great and talented men and women, patriots indeed, are being brought in, and many will soon be a part of our government, helping us to make America great again.
These may be facilities currently being used as prisons, such as those you saw earlier, or prisons that are being built supposedly in the name of the war on drugs, or facilities that have other uses but which could be quickly used to detain large numbers of people, such as this Amtrak facility.
Executive Order 10990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control the highways and seaports. 10995 allows the government to seize and control the communications media. 10997 allows the government to take over all electrical power, gas, petroleum, fuels, and minerals. 10998 allows the government to seize all means of transportation, including personal cars, trucks, or vehicles of any kind. 10999 allows the government to take over all food resources and farms. Executive Order 11,000 allows the government to mobilize civilians into work brigades under government supervision. 11,001 allows the government to take over all health, education, and welfare functions. 11,002 designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons. 11,003 allows the government to take over all airports and aircraft, including commercial aircraft.
Standing now in the main parking lot, which doesn't look too sinister. At this level, it is a very large parking lot, fenced on all sides by fence topped by barbed wire. It also has these electronically operated turnstiles. There is also a surveillance camera, just like we saw at the FEMA facility, pointing out to the parking lot, and a helicopter windsock. All of these apparent security measures are particularly unusual here, because this is a very low crime area, and this facility is nothing but an old train repair station with nothing in it worth stealing. In this portion of the parking lot is a brick building, suitable for processing, next to a gate that leads right out to the railroad tracks, and all of this is contained inside a fully fenced area, now 3 layers deep in fencing at this point. This U.S. Air Force train indicates federal and military involvement. Facing the opposite direction, you can see that this area, too, is a very large fenced area with railroad track running the length of the fence and plenty of warehouses. This facility was supposed to have closed in June of 1993, yet instead several $1 million in federal funds have been spent on supposed renovations over the past 2 years. Helicopter windsocks and markers are evident throughout the property. This small building is the only way into a particular fenced area. Inside this building, we see more of the motion-activated detectors, electronic turnstiles, and prison bars.
Today in New Orleans, they got a lot tougher on the holdouts.
Police department, anyone home?
Not only the flooded areas, but New Orleans' driest and wealthiest neighborhoods, too.
Police department!
The police and National Guard going street by street, house to house.
We need to make sure, too, that whenever we knock on doors, people refuse to leave. We need to make note, call it in.
They say there are no orders to use force, just strong persuasion, sometimes entering open houses with guns drawn, and instructions to disarm anyone inside.
You say guns will be taken?
No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
That happened today in this wealthy neighborhood where homeowners had armed themselves to protect their mansions. Residents were handcuffed on the ground. In the end, police took their weapons but let them stay in their homes.
All of the renovations to this property have involved putting in new fencing, electronic turnstiles, concrete flooring in unused warehouse buildings, and putting in large gas furnaces on buildings that were never heated any time in the past 20 years. Outside this building is fencing and a cattle run section of fence, all topped by barbed wire, pointing inward, not to keep people out, but to keep people in. This was common throughout the facility, particularly the new fencing that had been erected. Inside the fenced area on the other side of the building, you'll see signs that say Red Zone, right up next to the railroad tracks that run the length of the fenced area. Next to the Red Zone sign, you can see closely numbered markers on the fences that are too closely spaced to be parking markers, just as if they plan to have people line up to board the trains. Here's a helicopter marker on the power lines outside the facility, indicating expected helicopter traffic, and again, another tall radio antenna. Looking around, you can get an idea of how huge this place is and how many people it could contain in its fenced-in area. In yet another fenced area, we see a large warehouse building at the end, with the electronic turnstiles in front of it. The building is one that has a new concrete floor, and its doors and windows have all been blocked. Outside, there are new gas pipes. Even as we were filming, a black helicopter flew over us, observing what we were doing, which has happened many times when we have been at the facility. The gas lines and gas pipes at the facility run the length of the buildings. And come out at some very, very large, brand new furnaces that have been installed at the buildings throughout the facility. We found this crane, which has seen better days, but is plainly marked U.S. Army in the middle of the stockyard. We found other fully working military trucks and equipment here at other times. Inside the facility, we found large fenced-in areas next to the railroad tracks marked green zone and blue zone, suitable for holding a lot of people. Many of the old warehouse buildings have had new concrete floors put into them. Unused sections of railroad track have been dug up and replaced, and from the supplies in the stockyards, it is obvious they will be doing even more construction and fencing. Senator Lugar of Indiana recently obtained more federal funding to renovate this facility, which is supposedly only for the repair of broken trains and where most of the buildings on the property haven't been used for years. It certainly appears they are expecting more than just broken trains. This tower, overlooking the entire facility at one end of the facility along the railroad tracks, also has a radio antenna on it with a ladder up inside of it. It would make an excellent watchtower.
They were a little bit threatened because our weapons were bigger than their weapons.
For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city. This guard unit occupied a church, using it as a base camp. They had to leave a note because they could not get hold of the pastor to get permission.
It is surreal. Yeah, you never expect to do this in your own country.
Chris Montgomery says he'd rather be in Iraq than patrolling American neighborhoods.
Walking up and down these streets, you don't want to think about the stuff that you're gonna have to do if somebody pops around the corner.
You mean shoot in America?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want you in here.
We're not gonna do that.
I don't want you in here, period.
But there's a mandatory evacuation.
I know all about it.
Well, Patricia Coney's protests were to no avail. They moved her out of there, and she is now out of the city.
No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
It was a human drama with emotions and tensions running high. Patty Coney is still trying to recover physically and emotionally.
They really did a number on me.
From the day police forced her from her home.
It was traumatic. All of a sudden, they were banging on the front door, the side door, and the back door, and they said, "Let us in."
Patty tried to explain. She was on dry land, she had plenty of food and water, and didn't want to abandon her dogs. But it didn't matter.
If you see 6 or 8 police that look like linebackers pushing you in a corner, you're in shock. I'm saying, look at all my food. I got plenty of food. They kept pushing me back, and ended up like this. Look at what they did to me. They dragged me out of here. I really thought they were gonna kill me. I really did.
Drive, just cruising down the street. Damn, I find all these trucks. So let me give you a little information on what this factory is. This factory right here used to be your #1 famous, lovable little Pillsbury guy. The Pillsbury factory used to make your rolls and everything inside this place. And I found all these trucks. Now I can't say they're army vehicles or anything like that because they look like SWAT vehicles for the police. But who knows? There could be some sort of military vehicle.
They take them to a nearby Walmart.
As you can see, this is a Walmart disaster response team.
Many people, it's got to be dozens of people in the back of that thing. They take them to a nearby Walmart.
Hello, I make this video not a happy man. I'm at the neighborhood Walmart in San Jose, California. And this is what it has become. I did not want to believe it, but it's happening.
And then the Walmart is where I guess metro buses or school buses will take them to the shelter. The question is, what shelter are they taking them to?
You know, what this has turned into is a humanitarian crisis here.
That's kind of weird for a Walmart.
Simply take a realpolitik approach.
Since last night's declaration of martial law, soldiers are moving in secure key areas.
And suggest that, if we just cut some deals with Russia.
Are there enough shelters? What about food? What about clothing? What about...
even if it hurts people, or even if it violates international norms, or even if...
It's only going to get worse.
It leaves smaller countries vulnerable.
That perfect hurricane machine.
Because where do all these people go?
No. Anyone who knows anything about jail or anything about that knows what this is. That is a holding area.
Militarized vehicles with the United Nations logo have been spotted recently throughout the United States, and we continue to see the military equipment moved across the United States, Europe and Asia. The US military and National Guard reserves has been readied for some sort of action.
And with the weather event, we can't just fly helicopters in. We can't get to people right now until the weather subsides because we can't put our own resources in danger.
This might sound crazy, but there are many people who intuitively feel that something big is going to happen.
We can't put our own resources in danger.
The situation that's unfolding in Texas, this explosion at a chemical plant there. We're joined now on the phone by Chief Bob Royal from the Harris County Emergency Operations Center. Good morning to you. Thank you for being with us. I know the concern is that there could be additional explosions. Can you tell me what the situation there is and whether it's under control? I wonder if you said you feel that it's somewhat contained. Were there any significant injuries? Is there a danger to the public?
The next step of the Illuminati is to begin full-scale civil unrest that will lead to martial law inside the US and in Europe, which is needed to collapse the US dollar and to start a direct confrontation against Russia and China.
And they are actually taking people when they get off these boats from the southeastern or eastern part of Houston, and they're taking these people to Walmart, and that's where they're staying at. Are you kidding me?
You talk about that culture of preparedness. There is what some people call hurricane amnesia after these 12 long years of not having a storm of this size.
Is that what they were doing? They were preparing for these things?
As far as the next few days, this is the official track from the National Hurricane Center. You can see we still have a few days to prepare.
So it looks like it's begun. And Walmart, that closed in January 28th in Texas. There were 29 stores. 3 of them were in the area right now that they're using right now. 15 more stores or more stores actually have closed. There's probably more than that. There's like 31 stores or 27 or 29 stores right in Houston area itself or something like that. But there are some still open. They're moving stuff to other stores that are closer to the flood areas on Walmart. So they're closing some and moving some, and they're putting people in the Walmart. How do you like that?
For the first time in our history, the order was signed on July 1st, 2016, and is titled Executive Order, United States Policy on Pre- and Post-Strike Measures to Address Civilian Casualties in TS Operations Involving the Use of Force.
like to say something about the current climate of repression and fear. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. That's from the First Amendment to the Constitution.
Sure, your opinion will not go unnoticed.
Simpsons, you're under arrest for the violation of the Government Knows Best Act. Good day. I don't care. Ah!
Well, where do you think we are? Can't believe they put us in jail. It's not a jail. It's a re-education center. Let's see. After they blindfolded us, it was left, right, left, then a 3-hour plane ride. Well, we're not the only ones to be unjustly imprisoned. Check out all the left-wing celebrities.
Bill Clinton, what are you doing here? I call the Republican tax cuts unwise, and I stand by it. They're unwise.
You like that, Clinton? You traitors, pipe down. You're all here because you hate freedom.
A crazy cousin, Bill O'Reilly.
Lisa, that's not funny. You believe in the Bill of Rights. I don't know whether it's the lack of sleep, the sodium pentothal, or that it's the only cartoon I've seen in 2 months. But this is what I believe in now.
Simpsons, you're under arrest for the violation of the Government Knows Best Act.
Convergence of globalization and technology has created a new brand of terrorism. There were persons who, for whatever reason, came to view their home country as the enemy.
Let's talk about FEMA camp incarceration criteria. How are they going to determine who goes? And how they're going to determine it is through an algorithm they use. And this is what I've been told by insiders, and I've gotten this story multiple times from multiple sources. AI listens to everything we do, artificial intelligence. They listen to this broadcast. They know that you're logged on. They know how long you're logged on. They know every keystroke you press on a computer. They know every word that you say. You're identified by your voice print. You can be near a cell phone that is turned off. And if your voice is in earshot, it's being picked up and recorded by the NSA and filed under voice print. Keyword searches are applied, and you receive a score on 16 different dimensions, very similar to what psychologists call the MMPI, which is a 16-dimensional test of how high functioning someone is, and you get a separate score for each dimension. Well, you'll do the same thing here with this NSA protocols, and they're developing a naughty and nice list, and then you get an aggregate score. And what I've been told is no one really knows where they're going to draw the line. Who is going to be, oh, we could leave them alone. They'll be good servants in the new society. Watch for concern. And then they could have another one that would be, we need to get them off the streets for the good of everybody. And then another one might be, instant termination. Now, what am I basing this on? Well, Steve Quayle has talked to a number of people. In fact, the military person who gave him this information was killed after giving it to him. Red list, blue list stuff. Do you remember that from Steve? He doesn't talk about that a whole lot anymore. But if you ask him, he'll tell you the story I just did. And what we're looking at here is the NSA has cataloged everybody. They know who you are. They know your potential for rebellion. They've run their algorithms. And when the time comes and they face scan you, and the FBI has been gathering face scanning information for years. They've been doing it at traffic cams and all sorts of other places. I mean, what is it? You're videotaped or photographed, 1,300 to 2,000 times per day in America? Almost double that in Britain. They're going to get the naysayers off the street. They want you out of harm's way, their harm. The criteria is going to be what they've already told you. This is not rocket science, and I don't have to go to an unnamed source on the inside to tell you this. This has already been published in the MEAC report, and it's become the operating credo of the Department of Homeland Security. If you were, at one time they listed people as a Ron Paul supporter, a Christian, a pro-Second Amendment advocate, a pro-constitutionalist, someone who is concerned about the New World Order, someone who is a Christian. You get the idea? Traditional Americans are now terrorists. we were labeled in the 2008 MEAC report as domestic terrorists. This is their operating credo. I mean, first of all, you blow a couple buildings up with airplanes. You create the need for the TSA to protect all of us, and they have caught exactly no terrorists. I went through a TSA line yesterday. What a flippin' joke these people are. I mean, their organization, their statutory policies aren't even consistent airport to airport. No wonder they have never caught anybody. And we had to make this up, and, it's about radical Muslim extremism. And now that's considered to be hate speech. But that was the justification used to create the TSA and their groping policies to begin with. Incredible, isn't it? Isn't it just incredible that we live in such an upside-down society? So the criteria to go to a FEMA camp is if you're a good, upstanding American. If you support good, upstanding people for public office. If you go to church on Sunday. This is the criteria. That's who's going to a FEMA camp. How will they do it? Well, here's what history teaches us. The bus comes in about 4 a.m. There's an accompanying truck, in our case an SUV. Troops of the mass will jump out. They'll come. They'll have the little pylon. They'll knock down your door. You'll be looking up in a somber sleep, just opening your eyes to guns in your face with flashlights that blind you. You'll go with the clothes you have on or don't have on. They'll throw you in the back of a truck. You'll be handcuffed after you've been face scanned and fingerprinted. And they'll take you off to a relocation facility where you'll be given prison garb and processed. And then they'll make a decision where they send you. And they will not send men, women, moms and dads and kids to the same place. They'll separate families. How do we know? Because this has been in the FEMA camp literature. FM 39.4, for example. I couldn't make this stuff up. Go to the Common Sense Show, put in FM 39.4, and plan on spending a couple hours reading, because I've written about this a number of times. This is how they're going to make the decisions on who's going to go and how they're going to do it. When is it going to happen? It's going to happen in a preemptive manner. And this is what I would do if I were them. When Donald Trump is gone from office because the American people didn't bother to change Congress enough in 2018, the Democrats regained control of the House, they will impeach Donald Trump. And then they'll begin to enact their own reign of terror on the United States people. And before they come after your guns and before they do all the other things that'll cause America to rise up, they're going to come and make surgical strikes. That's what... Do you remember the drills they did in 2015? 2016? You remember UX16? Do you remember those drills? Well, that's what they were doing them for. They're coming for people like you listening to this broadcast. Surgical strikes, middle of the night, take you out, and then the reign of terror is going to begin. And they've said it in so many different ways on how they're going to do it and how they've practiced for it. This is the time we're at. We are at a crossroads. There is no second opportunity here. We either stand up to these people, and I've given you the political mechanisms to do it, scare the hell out of Congress with the fear of not being reelected, and a lot of these people will buckle. They are weak people.
Part of this is big change in the White House, a new cultural experience, and some of the crazies are coming out of their closet.
For almost any reason, with absolutely no limitations.
Right now, it looks like there is no connection between the men arrested and any known terrorist cell.
Homegrown.
Homegrown, I should say.
Folks, we've got a very serious situation here. I'm holding what is called the right-wing extremism, current economic and political climate, fueling resurgence and radicalization and recruitment. And in it, we talked about the fact that they define pro-lifers as domestic terrorists. They put this in a Department of Homeland Security document, this official assessment, now saying pro-lifers, people that believe in end-time prophecies, people that are opposed to the administration's position on immigration, those of us that are standing up for the sanctity of life and for the sanctity of marriage, all of those are now potential, and this is what they're saying, domestic terrorists.
It's a terrorist next door that could be our bigger threat.
They call people who believe in the sanctity of life, who believe in owning firearms, who believe in serving their country in the military and coming back, who are very concerned about the policies that this nation is embarking on, spending too much money, taxing too much. It's all listed right here. These are the domestic right-wing extremists.
It's not a jail. It's a re-education center. I don't know whether it's the lack of sleep, the sodium pentothal, or that it's the only cartoon I've seen in 2 months. But this is what I believe in now.
For predictive programming, like exactly what we were talking about, it's happening. And that's not a bullshit. I'm watching it live on ABC 13 in Texas, in Houston right now. Just go live right now. They just took some people off the boat and they took them to Tidwell Road, and the buses were taking them from the boat to the Tidwell Road Walmart Supercenter right there in Jersey Village. And there's other ones that are being used too. So there you have it. there's your temporary FEMA camps.
The National Weather Service says that parts of Texas might be uninhabitable for weeks, even potentially months after the hurricane. Are you prepared? Is FEMA prepared to be there for months on end?
Remember what the FEMA camps that we were talking about? This event is real that they caused, and there's real people suffering, and you're not looking and you're not seeing that part. Only seeing on the mainstream media, all you're seeing is a bunch of mocking.
FEMA's going to be there for years. This disaster is going to be a landmark event. We're already pushing forward forces to be on the ground.
So let's go take a look at what they did to this neighborhood Walmart. And the way it's set up too is perfect. Look at, they got a security, why would you have a security camera right here? Why is this needed? What? This obviously looks like some sort of an entrance that they're gonna have you coming in and out of. I mean, come on. Oh God, just come on. Look at this. So as you see, this is the parking lot. This is where they're going to be busting you in. It's right off the 101.
We're setting up and gearing up for the next couple years.
Last night I dreamt about how things were.
Not yet of every enemy of the state.
And then I woke up here.
This is everything you need to know. Right here, right now.
Hey, America, everybody needs to stand up for their rights and demand what the fuck are they doing up here?
ODD TV.
So the recent California fires are very strange and suspect, to say the least. We have specific areas being burned, like energy was being directed at certain things. In drone footage of the aftermath, we see houses completely obliterated and turned to ash while the surrounding landscapes and trees are totally fine. Here is a clip courtesy of Serbian Conspiracy. I'll put a link in the description. You'll notice here that stores and restaurants are wiped out while other things are still in perfect shape. Other buildings are fine, trees are untouched, but specific structures are just devastated. You gotta ask yourself, what's up with that? How did the fires get to these certain buildings but the surrounding areas, including the parking lot, look normal? Is this the result of direct energy weapons? Ranged weapons that inflict damage on a target by emitting highly focused energy? The answer is most likely yes. But most people believe that these kind of weapons are just science fiction, due to movies like Austin Powers, for instance.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin phase 2 of our evil project. Or is it phase 3? I don't know phases. Anyways, this is the phase in which we put a giant laser on the moon. As you know, the moon rotates around the Earth like so. When the moon reaches its appropriate lunar alignment, it will destroy Washington, D.C. Anyways, the key to this plan is the giant laser.
But in reality, these direct energy weapons are admitted to be real and are documented.
Can I ask you a question about some of the technology that you're developing to fight the war on terror, specifically directed energy and high-powered microwave technology? When do you envision that you can weaponize that type of technology?
Goodness. It is in, for the most part, the kinds of things you're talking about are in varying early stages. Do you have anything you'd add?
I don't think I would add much. I think they are in early stages and probably not ready for employment at this point.
In the normal order of things, when you invest in research and development and begin a developmental project, you don't have any intention or expectations that one would use it. On the other hand, the real world intervenes from time to time, and you reach in there and take something out that is still in a developmental stage, and you might use it. So your question's not answerable. It depends on what happens in the future and how well things move along the track, and whether or not someone feels it's appropriate to reach into a development stage and see if something might be useful, as was the case with the unmanned aerial vehicles.
But you sound like you're willing to experiment with it.
I think that's the point, and I think, we have, I think, from the beginning of this conflict, I think General Franks has been very open to looking at new things if there are new things available, and has been willing to put them into the fight even before they've been fully wrung out. And I think that's not referring to these two particular cases of directed energy or high-powered microwave, but sure.
Scientists have been working on this top-secret project since 1974. This laser is capable of unleashing the power of the sun. Enough energy to light up every home in the U.S. or wipe out mankind.
What we can do is focus this very high energy into a very small spot for a very short time. And when that happens, we get the conditions that are very much like inside our sun.
So you hear that? Now let's watch a clip from YouTube channel In Truth by Grace. Link will be in the description, of course.
This is not a carbon fire. This is the only fire in the whole wide world that's considered a forest fire where the forest did not burn. The forest didn't burn here. All the glass melted. All the structural materials that used to be a house have disappeared. They have disappeared. You have a couple of bent poles here, a couple of poles that are bent, but you have absolutely no materials. The houses have not fallen. The houses have disappeared. The materials of these contents of these houses are gone.
A lot of questions tonight about those big Air Force planes that have been flying low over the area, spraying for mosquitoes tonight. A lot of questions tonight about those big Air Force planes that have been flying low over the area, spraying for mosquitoes. Tonight, it will be over Brazoria County, then head to Harris and Liberty. But is it safe? That's a question on a lot of people's minds. Matt Doherty is live with what he uncovered. Matt?
Yeah, Texas Health Department officials say the chemical being released into the area is safe for people and pets, but not everyone's taking their word for it. Neighbors in Pearland had settled down for the evening when they heard the sound of something getting closer, louder. This couple wasn't sure what it was at the time, but it turned out to be what everyone's talking about today, an Air Force C-130 spraying nuisance mosquitoes that recently hatched in the floodwaters. The Southeast Houston neighbors we caught up with near the Almeida Mall say they're concerned about the spray and the operation that will be happening overhead as soon as the sun goes down.
I think that's it's going to be hazardous, harmful. I mean, of course, they're trying to kill mosquitoes, of course. I think it's going to be hazardous and harmful, and and that's pretty much, what I feel about it.
The state health department is not issuing any advisories and says humans have nothing to worry about, and neither do their pets or livestock when a, quote, fine mist with a chemical commonly called NALED is released into the air. The state is spraying at night to kill the greatest number of mosquitoes in populated areas affected by the flooding. The night spraying also helps to reduce the number of bees that would be killed as they return to their hives when it gets dark. Will humans choose to stay indoors as well?
People are going to be out here, you guys know, so it's contagious. And I just don't think it's a good idea, for me personally.
So you'll be inside tonight?
Of course. That's a guarantee.
A state health official told me today that the aerial spraying continues tonight. It moves into Harris County. That part of the operation will be finished tomorrow. Once that's done, they will move up north into Montgomery County. We're live in Southeast Houston this hour. Standing for Houston, Matt Doherty.
A lot of questions tonight about those big Air Force planes that have been flying low over the area, spraying for mosquitoes. Tonight, it will be over Brazoria County, then head to Harris and Liberty. But is it safe? It's a question on a lot of people's minds. Matt Doherty is live with what he uncovered. Matt?
Neighbors in Pearland had settled down for the evening when they heard the sound of something getting closer, louder. This couple wasn't sure what it was at the time, but it turned out to be what everyone's talking about today, an Air Force C-130 spraying
neurotoxins everywhere. Is it safe, they ask? Just look at the gear these soldiers are wearing before using an AC-130 gunship to spray neurotoxins over unsuspecting civilians. You couldn't make this shit up, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what makes this situation worse is that the neurotoxin that they're using, NALED, is banned in the European Union and other countries because it's a known neurotoxin that causes brain damage. Scientific studies prove what they're dumping in Houston right now causes brain damage, ladies and gentlemen. You can look it up for yourself. That's why it's called NALED. They tried using it in Puerto Rico last year for Zika, and the governor of Puerto Rico lost his mind. He sent in the army to stop the shipment of NALED from leaving the airport. We covered this story while they were spraying in Miami.
Just as businesses were opening for the day, a low-flying plane dropped chemicals to kill mosquito larvae. A welcome dousing, but not at 9 a.m.
I don't need my employees to be rushing from their car to the building so they don't get this sprayed on top of themselves.
How did they create a laser with such devastating force? By assembling an array of 192 lasers and aiming them at a single hydrogen pellet the size of a BB. These 192 lasers are linked together by a twisting jungle of tubes that snake through this mammoth 10-story structure, which is the length of 3 football fields. The plan is to fire all 192 laser beams at once. Each beam starts out low-powered, about the size of what's inside your DVD player. But as they pass through the complex maze of tubes, they merge into one super beam. This super beam fires 500 terawatts of power in 2 billionths of a second, roughly 500 times the entire peak power output of the United States. When that light strikes the hydrogen pellet, it cooks it to over 800 million degrees.
The fact is, we are dealing with microwave weapon technology. How else would this tree catch on fire from the inside?
A haunting but mesmerizing scene from the wildfires in Sonoma County. A man came across this tree burning from the inside out.
Joined the Royal Navy in 1960, and I specialized in microwave warfare. Radar, obviously, which uses microwave, but they don't just teach you radar, they teach you all about microwaves and other uses. So I understood about microwave warfare and how it can damage people, how it can harm people. And when I finished with the Royal Navy, I was also a diver in the Royal Navy. And microwaves are used in underwater mines as booby traps. Which actually got me interested, because I was actually taking a bomb to pieces underwater, and it was too complicated. And I brought it to the surface, and my partner that was on the surface said, "Don't be an idiot, take it back down." He said, if somebody's beaming you with microwaves, they'll go right through you, and as you open the casing, trigger a photoelectric cell, and it'll blow all of us up. And he said, if it doesn't go through to the bomb, it'll aim it at your head and make you make a mistake. And that's really got me interested from that point, because I thought, well, how can microwaves going into your brain make you make a mistake? And I asked a lot of questions. I have a very curious brain. And the forces, they're very good at explaining things and telling you things. So I did that, and I also did a medical course while I was in to help me understand everything. And when I left, a small part of my job was to question captured agents, spies, terrorists, because microwaves then were used as weapons, as they are today. It is a perfect stealth weapon. And when governments don't like a group of people, for instance, the ladies who protest at Greenham Common in England about the American missile base they camped, they were microwaved. We microwaved Catholics in Northern Ireland to make them sick. It goes on all over the world. And it's a weapon that you don't know you're being targeted, because the dose is very, very low, which is actually more dangerous than a high dose. It's very, very low, and it may take a year or two, but you can cause neurological damage and cancers with low-level microwaves, and you can make all your opponents sick. It's a perfect weapon for a government to use. So that was going on, and I gathered all the information about that from people who were captured from other countries to find out what technologies they had, what pulse frequencies they used. But as I stressed, it was only a small part of my work, but because I was highly trained in it and I was useful, it just became a part of my working structure, along with master criminals and terrorists and all sorts of people that I found incredibly interesting, actually, to talk to. Very, very interesting. And then when I left there, I took a job teaching, and I taught advanced level physics. and I specialized in nuclear and atomic radiation and, again, microwaves. And I've just always been in microwaves. And then it was a doctor. I went to see a doctor once, as most teachers do, with a sore throat. And he said, as most doctors do, it's viral, there's nothing I can do for you. And I was leaving, and he said, hang on, Barry, he said, you're a physicist. And I said, yeah. And he said, can you explain something? He said, I went to a house that had a cot death 5 years ago. And the family moved, and a new family moved in. They had a new baby. The cot was in exactly the same place, and there was another cot death. And he said, 5 years apart. And he said, there's a transmitter the other side of the child's bedroom wall. Could the transmitter cause the cot death? And I said, I don't know. I said, but I'll look into it. And then I found that microwaves were involved, and I knew what microwaves did. And a while later, I went back to the doctor, I wrote a paper on it, and I said, there's your answer. Microwaves can cause cot death by 2 or 3 different mechanisms. There's your answer.
Matthew McDermott was driving around looking for escape routes as multiple fires closed in on the area he was in. The tree appears to be hollowed out by embers and flames.
Right? You could look this up. This is all over the news. Tree on fire from the inside. The only time that happens is when trees are struck by lightning, which in itself is a direct energy, right? This whole thing is all messed up. Hurricane after hurricane, which are also able to be created and controlled by man. And now this? And right on cue, we have the Geostorm movie coming out, which has some truth in it.
We can control our weather.
But it's mostly outer space reinforcement propaganda.
The Senate committee will now hear from Jacob Lawson, Climate ISS Chief Coordinator. May the record reflect that he was nearly 1 hour late.
Yeah, sorry about that. I literally had to fly in from outer space.
And then, for some reason, he told somebody who told somebody, and people started phoning me up and writing to me, saying, can you explain this, or can you help with that? I've never actually asked anyone if I can do anything. They always come to me. And then the police came to me and said, we're getting this new Tetra airwave system, we don't understand what's happening. Can you read all this scientific rubbish and just put it into Janet and John and tell us? And I said, of course I can. So that was published, and since then it's snowballed and snowballed and snowballed, and now I receive up to 1,000 communiques a week from various countries, various people, and I can't handle it. So, and I'm here now because somebody asked me to come here. Wi-Fi, I think anyone who puts Wi-Fi into a school should be locked up for the rest of their life. I really do. I think they're not fit to walk on the surface of this planet because they haven't looked at the research, and whatever incentive they have, it is not worth the genetic problems that parents are going to face with their children when they're born. And if you think of a single parent, a mother, who has a genetically deformed child, that particular mother will feel guilty because she gave birth. She will feel guilty, and she will be worried every single second of every single day for her life. She will worry that the child won't marry. If the child can marry, she'll worry that the children will carry the disease, which they will. She will worry when she dies who will take care of them. So you are condemning both the family and the children to a lifetime of absolute hell. And this is already published. It is available to look up. It's what I call intentional ignorance. They are offered some sort of incentive and they think, oh, this is going to be good, we'll have it. Now the problem is, imagine you are a 15-year-old schoolgirl. All of the 400,000 eggs in your ovaries were with you at birth. They're not fully developed, but they're with you. They are 10 times more susceptible to radiation than all of the other DNA in the body. And scientists don't realize that. They don't read all of the papers as I do. So you have this highly susceptible genetic material which is going to make your children. And you are irradiating it because Wi-Fi's, they are transmitters as well as the routers, as well as the ones either side of you. They are all transmitting at this height through your ovaries. So you are risking the damage, the DNA damage of your child every time you sit down and you use Wi-Fi. And it's like saying, if I smoke a cigarette, which one will cause the damage? The answer is I don't know. It could be the one today. So you now have a child that has a probability of being genetically damaged. But the real damage is when that child grows up. You have genetic material in your ovaries which could be damaged. Now, the real problem comes, so you have a child that could be born genetically damaged, but the real problem comes when you become pregnant. If you are a teacher or a mature student and you become pregnant, because the embryo inside your womb, in the first 100 days, all of those 400,000 eggs are forming in your embryo, your child's ovaries. So your child could be born with genetically damaged eggs. And the main thing about the eggs in the ovaries of your child is that they have absolutely no protection. It hasn't been developed yet. We have a natural protection against microwaves. It was developed since the Stone Age against thunderstorms and massive amounts of radiation coming into our body. But in your embryo, your uterus, in the fetus, where your child is developing for the first 100 days, in the ovaries, the eggs do not have that protection. So they are at maximum risk from radiation. And for the first month or so, you wouldn't even know you were pregnant. You wouldn't even be taking precautions. That is the main danger area. So you give birth to a daughter, but her ovaries are now contaminated. She may be normal, she may be genetically damaged, but her ovaries are at the most risk. So when your daughter grows up and she becomes pregnant and has a baby, this is where one of these eggs will be fertilized and come out. So the real damage here is your grandchildren. That is where it is going to show most. And we already see this in animals that have reproductive cycles of a year or 2 years or 3 years. We're already seeing this, and it has been published by veterinary schools and vets and scientists, so we know this happens. And it's also been documented in the Cold War when women were deliberately microwaved. So we know it does happen. The documents are there. And what you're risking by putting Wi-Fi into schools is the future generations of all of these girls. But it gets worse, because this particular DNA, the mitochondrial DNA inside you, and the DNA inside you, the mitochondrial DNA, you can trace unchanged to your mother, her mother, her mother, right the way back to the beginning of the human race in Africa, the Stone Age. You can trace your ancestors, if you could, right back to the very first lady. It is unchanged, the mitochondria. And that is being unchanged in your children, which means if you damage it, your child could be genetically damaged, then her child, and her child, and her child, forever. You are condemning the future generations of every single child until there are no more lines left in the female in your family. You must stop. A female must stop producing children for this to stop. So when you put Wi-Fi in schools, what you're saying is, for the sake of a little bit of money that saves getting a workman in to drill holes through the walls to feed cable, because it's cheaper, we're just going to put Wi-Fi in, but you can have genetically damaged children for the rest of your family's career. That's what we're saying.
Although I didn't start ODD TV until 2015, I've been an avid researcher since 2012. One of the very first topics that I came across was chemical aerosols that are distributed by airplanes, otherwise known as chemtrails. You can see them with your own eyes, and it's extremely easy to see that they are not condensation trails due to the chemicals staying airborne for hours and not dissipating. Another topic I ran into early on was HAARP, which is a facility that uses ionospheric heaters to tamper with the weather. They now claim that HAARP is no longer in operation, but we'll talk more about that here in a minute. Many talking heads and government-sponsored websites will try their best to keep people from looking into the subject by ridiculing it and acting like it doesn't exist.
There are people that believe that the cloud-like trails you see in the sky behind jets are actually the government spraying evil chemicals. Now, I have to admit that I am very skeptical when it comes to the idea of chemtrails.
HAARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
Uh-oh, here we go. HAARP. Every conspiracy theorist's ears just got a little bit bigger. For those of you who don't know what HAARP is, it's a top-secret military installation that some believe is being used to weaponize the weather. Do you feel like HAARP has anything to do with these weather modifications?
Just like if you're going to build a house, you don't use one tool. So I think there are multiple tools, and HAARP is one of them. Whether it's the primary one or not, I don't know.
He is a chemtrail believer. I'm not buying that chemtrails are causing all these things. I'm gonna talk to a man next. His name is Mick West, and he runs a debunking website where he clearly and scientifically analyzes all of the problems with the conspiracy theories behind chemtrails. Are chemtrails real?
No, it's impossible to make a mile-wide trail by spraying powder. All that happens when a plane flies through the air is that it triggers a cloud. It's not actually really making a cloud. The cloud was ready to happen anyway.
What are your thoughts on, like, HAARP?
HAARP. Well, there's really wild speculation about what HAARP could actually do. Like it could, create earthquakes and change the weather. But that's just basically wild speculation.
The fears of HAARP, you feel, are just based on ignorance.
Yeah.
We have our super skeptical science sleuth, Carly Kloss, out there, hot on the trails.
There are many wild theories about the billowy trails emitted by aircraft that decorate our skies.
Look around, look at this. They're accelerating their plan, man.
Why are they doing it?
Eugenics, population control.
Look up, people, look!
chemical trails. Is there any truth behind this speculation? I decided to take my inquiry to Tory Ward, a commercial pilot with over 11,000 hours of flight experience and more than 80 types of aircraft. He should have a scientific explanation for what those mysterious streaks in the sky really are.
So Tory, these long white lines that are left in the sky after a jet flies through the air, is there any truth to the theory that there's chemicals that are released by the government?
Absolutely not.
What about to control minds?
No, they are very much conspiracy theories. It is a condensation trail. Contrails are formed by generally aircraft at higher altitudes where the temperature is cold enough and also moist enough.
Okay.
There you have it. Myth debunked. Chemtrails, they're just not real.
Very cool. Very cool.
The funny thing about that is they must have been left out of the loop because this is verifiable public information. Let's start with a 2009 document from the Royal Society called Geoengineering the Climate: Science, Governance, and Uncertainty. This document is loaded with information that Joe Rogan, Mick West, and Bill Nye will deny without any real rebuttal, including this part on page 4 that says, weather modification dates at least back to the 1830s when the proposals of American meteorologist James Pollard Espy to stimulate rain by controlled forest burning led to him becoming feted as the Storm King. Anyway, I will link this document in the description along with everything else. Next up is a NASA document from 2001 called Future Strategic Issues, Future Warfare. I've covered this in a previous video about chemtrails, but just in case you're new to this, here's a short clip from that video. So check this out. This was written by Dennis M. Bushnell, Chief Scientist at NASA Langley Research Center. Future Strategic Issues, Future Warfare, circa 2025. The future is now. There are many things in the pages of this document. I just want to briefly show you page 43, Microdust Weaponry, a mechanical analog to biomicron-sized mechanized dust which is distributed as an aerosol and inhaled into the lungs. Dust mechanically bores into lung tissue and executes various pathological missions. And here on the bottom, a wholly new class of weaponry which is legal. So is the future in 2025 or is it now? You know, that really doesn't even matter. If this paper was released in 2001, then they obviously have been working on things like this and programs like this for many years, most likely many decades. And the paper says circa 2025, which means roughly 2025. I think depending on how you look at it, the time we're living in now can be defined as roughly 2025. And check this out. We go to metabunk.org where this dude named Chuck is like, I found this supposed NASA document, is it real? And Mick West replies, it's not a new document, it's an old PowerPoint presentation from 2001. There's nothing new in it that's not in many other books and papers on the future of war or futurism in general. Then it just goes on talking that usual Mick West bullshit. So this presentation is nothing to worry about because it's a few years old? Are you kidding me? At least he tried, I guess. After all, he is only an employee for someone that doesn't want information getting out. Now, let's look at one last document. This one is called A Recommended National Program in Weather Modification. Another NASA document, but this one is from 1966. This one talks about the Department of Agriculture's Weather Modification Program. ESSA's, or Environmental Science Services Administration's Planned Weather Modification Research Program. The Department of Defense's Weather Modification Program. The Bureau of Reclamation's Weather Modification Program, National Science Foundation's Weather Modification Program, the Federal Aviation Agency's Weather Modification Program, and finally, NASA's Weather Modification Program. If these were all from 1966, can you imagine what's taking place now? Speaking of 1966, a movie called Our Man Flint came out, and it's about an organization called Galaxy that seeks to control the world with their machine that's capable of controlling the weather.
New York, San Francisco, New Orleans, Marseille, every seaport's in danger. Who is doing this and why, huh? It's the work of madmen.
Oh, mad, sane. Oh, they're brilliant. They're demonstrating that they can control the weather.
Turn wheat belts into deserts. Put icebergs in the Mediterranean. You control the weather and you control the world.
I don't know, sir. It's on all channels.
Who are they?
People of the world, there is no need to panic. Please do not be alarmed. We are your friends.
Members of the Grand Council, you have just witnessed a live transmission, remote control from the Arctic region.
Get a radio fix on this.
Through the inducement of regulated tremors along the established fissures in the Earth's crust, we are now able to control local weather conditions throughout the world.
For the more skeptical among you, we have prepared further proof.
On the southern edge of Iwo Jima is the extinct volcano known as Burichabi.
In the Chukotsky region, on the northeast tip of Russia, lies the dormant volcano known as Amgoyamska.
In exactly 10 seconds, we will cause these ancient volcanoes to erupt with a Richter force of 4.9.
Seismology reports a Richter reading of 4.9 at both locations.
The Galaxy organization's logo looks a lot like the Freemason square and compass. Just saying. While we're on the subject of television, let me give you a few more. You know that's my thing. There's an Underdog episode from 1965 called Weathering the Storm.
It's a huge storm!
But this is impossible. Our scientists promised us good weather, and they're never wrong.
But they were wrong this time, and the reason for their error was Simon Bar Sinister.
Look, Ed. Look what happens to the world when I use my weather machine. I push the key for rain, and it pours. And now watch this. Simon says, tornado twist.
On the original Bionic Woman TV show, there is a 3-part event called Kill Oscar, where there's this mad scientist capable of controlling the weather using a machine.
Blowing
Yeah, okay, you can check my hearing because I just heard a thunderstorm. Now there's nothing in that sky, not a cloud, nothing.
It's our weather control station. Actually, it's the experimental lab for the full-size working model we're building at White Sands.
Are you talking about things like watering deserts and controlling floods?
Yeah, that was the plan. But after some early success, we ran into some real problems. If we bring rain into one area, it causes drought in another. And international law isn't even written on a country's rights to air currents.
Yes, but Rudy, if it works, that's fantastic.
No, it's not as good as it sounds. There are basic instabilities. We have a limited power to create severe storm conditions, but we can't control the damage.
1984, G.I. Joe, Revenge the Cobra.
Soon Flint and the other Joes will pass directly over the pit of chaos, and there they will learn the folly of pursuit. With my new invention, the Weather Dominator, I shall destroy G.I. Joe with the irresistible power of nature itself!
You have no hope of resisting our might. We control a new power. The raw strength of nature itself, against which there is no defense. Watch! Watch as I unleash the sea and sky to do my bidding! He's not fooling around. I shall continue to unleash the terror of weather gone mad until you surrender to me and acknowledge the rule of Cobra!
A 1998 movie called The Avengers, where Sean Connery seeks to charge people for good weather and punish others with bad weather.
Above you, the weather is changing. The temperature is dropping. Soon it will be freezing. Why? Because the weather is no longer in God's hands, but in mine. Those clouds, all controlled by me, are recreating the weather. I have set off a chain reaction that will paralyze and ultimately destroy the city.
And one more interesting clip from the 1998 X-Files movie.
Are you familiar with what the Federal Emergency Management Agency's real power is? FEMA allows the White House to suspend constitutional government upon declaration of a national emergency. Think about that. A silent weapon for a quiet war. The systematic release of an indiscriminate organism for which the men who will bring it on still have no cure. They've been working on this for 50 years. While the rest of the world have been fighting crooks and commies, these men have been secretly negotiating a planned Armageddon.
Negotiating with whom?
I think you know. The timetable has been set. It'll happen on a holiday when people are away from their homes. The president will declare a state of emergency, at which time all government, all federal agencies will come under the power of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, the secret government.
FEMA, the secret government. How about that? I don't doubt it. So anyway, they claimed to have shut down HAARP, which is a facility that used ionospheric heaters to change the weather. I don't believe for a second that HAARP is shut down, but even if it is, there are many other facilities across the Earth that do the same thing. We have the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, the Sura ionospheric heating facility in Russia, and there is an association called ISCAT or ESCAT that operates several facilities in different parts of the world, with their headquarters being in Sweden. And this is just naming a few. Check out a book called Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. The author still believes that the Earth is a globe and that outer space is a real thing, but it's still a good book. They list a dozen more of these HAARP-type facilities, showing that even if HAARP is closed down, it doesn't matter. It wasn't the only one. There is no natural weather anymore. Not only can they make rain, snow, hail by mixing certain chemicals, but hurricanes can be created, and natural hurricanes can be amplified and directed. NASA and these other elitist groups are playing God, and I, for one, don't appreciate it. I want to say God bless to all those that are affected by this man-made weather. It's absolutely BS.
Don't worry if you can't hear what I'm saying. I couldn't even hear myself. This is the loudest sound you could possibly conceive. And, as it turns out, the cleanest. Now, the most amazing thing is that that cloud up there, which was generated by the engine, is just a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. It's water vapor. And in about an hour's time, someone in Mississippi is going to get wet washing. It will actually rain. I told you! It's raining! That's unbelievable! Oh. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather.